And now, another edition of MOBtv Hits. In Mob, we crust. There's nothing more Italian than a slice of New York pizza pie. And there's nothing more mobster than using a pizza place as a front for illegal activity. In 1959, a low-level hoodlum from New York's Little Italy, named Ralph, Raphael, Rafi, or Ray for short Cuomo, was released from prison after serving a stretch for armed robbery. Looking for a fresh start, Cuomo opened a pizzeria on Prince Street, calling it Ray's Pizza, which, according to him, sounded better than Ralph's Pizza. Surprisingly, the pizza was really good. Ray's drew lines out the door, becoming a New York institution, which wasn't exactly the best way to hide the fact that his real business wasn't pizza. The restaurant was, in fact, the home base for a drug ring run by the Lucchese crime family. You see, in the basement, right below the pizza ovens, the Lucchese's laundered cash and bundled heroin. But as his pizza grew in popularity, Rafi was torn between the two worlds. Despite branching out and adding more locations, he continued to make his real money from a different kind of cheese. And while the cops bugged his pizzeria on multiple occasions, they never could catch him in the act. After he died, Ralph's heirs sold the Prince Street tenement. The building was almost as lucrative as the drugs, netting $5.9 million. Over the years, there have been multiple imitators, but the legend of Ray's Pizza lives on. Till this day, no one has divulged what made Ray's secret sauce so addicting. This has been another edition of MOBtv Hits. MOBtv. Welcome to the family.
Welcome to The Life. I'm Larry MAZZA, your host, and each week we are bringing you a guest who has lived the life. And tonight, we're privileged to have my dear friend, Bobby Luisi.
Larry, thank you so much for having me on tonight.
Thank you for being here.
It's an honor to be here, my friend.
Thank you. We have a little camaraderie because I've been on your show a few times.
Yes, you have.
And we'll talk about that later. But right now, you have an incredible story, and I want you to tell it. So, how'd you wind up in The Life?
Well, my father was with the Petriacca family since he was a kid. He was an enforcer, tough guy, proposed twice in the family.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up with all these wise guys around me. When my mother and father got divorced when I was younger, she married Santo. Santo was a bookmaker, loan shark,
right,
the whole thing. So since a young age, I grew up with it. It was just, you know, a normal life to me.
Elementary school age or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, 11 years old, I started working for the Angiulo family.
Okay.
Which Jerry Angiulo was everybody knows was the boss of Boston under Raymond Petriacca. Mm-hmm. And I was working with pinball machines and the money machines. I don't know if you remember those days.
Yes, of course.
They had the dime machines. They looked at the pinball.
Yeah.
So I used to go every Saturday and roll the dimes. I was 11, 12 years old. I was making $50 a week.
That's how it starts.
Yeah. I mean, I loved it. Every club we went in, there was a wise guy.
Right.
You know, all over Boston.
But you started in Philly.
No, I went to Philly later on.
Okay, so explain that. I'm confused with that.
No, I was born in Boston in the North End, in Little Italy. All my associations were with the Petriacca family.
Right.
I was building for a while. You know, they were grooming me. I was like 16, 17 years old, but I was also doing carpentry work. And I really enjoyed it. And I got some good opportunities. I got a 2 builder's license. I had my own construction company. So I started going that way.
Yeah.
And in the 80s, I went to Martha's Vineyard, built maybe 100 homes down there.
Oh, so you were on the right path, actually.
I really was.
Yeah.
You know, then the market crashed in the late 80s down there. And I was losing all my properties. And I was just disgusted. At that point, there was a lot of problems in the Petriacca family. Mm-hmm. Raymond Sr. had died. There was a lot of confusion. And I said, you know what? I had a gun on my back. I'd just go home and, you know, go hang out with the guys again.
Yeah.
You know, try to build up again.
It's almost too easy for that to happen, you know, in hindsight.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And so you did that. You probably got back into bookmaking, loan sharking, all the basic stuff.
Right away. Yeah.
You know, we didn't do much shaking down, like of stores, owners, and things like that. We wanted to be friends with them. How about you guys?
Well, I wasn't big in extortion.
Good.
I have to be honest with you. I was happy and content. I had my car clubs. I had my bookmaking.
Right.
And eventually got into the drug business.
One of the rules we broke.
One of the rules.
We're not supposed to be in that business.
No, we're not. And it was just cocaine and marijuana. It wasn't, not the other thing.
Not that I'm any better than you. I never got into it.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough at a young age to be successful in bookmaking.
Right.
So I stayed with that. But I do see how it can happen because people around me were.
Jerry and Jula went away. Larry Bione, all the big shots in Boston, Joe Russo, all those guys were gone. All the money was gone.
Right.
All that old money was gone. Now we're a young crew coming up with no money.
Yeah.
So we needed the drugs, you know, and I built up an empire fast with that.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that because I'm not real familiar with the whole drug business and I'd like to know. How'd you build an empire?
All right. Well, you know, I started like the other guys. We had my family owned a bar room in the North End in the neighborhood. So I went in there and a few guys asked me if they could sell out of there. I was shaking them down.
Yeah.
Told them, yeah, you know, and I ended up going partners with one of the guys. I'm seeing all these young kids wearing great, beautiful clothes. They're driving Cadillacs. It was all drug money. So I had to get a piece of it.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years later, I became a millionaire again with the drug money.
Oh.
What I did is I took my business sense and I put it on the street.
Right.
And I put my crew together like a corporation, like I was running a company.
Right.
I didn't need the extortion. We were making so much in the other businesses, it really didn't matter. I wasn't going to chase guys for $500 a month or $1,000 a month. I wasn't interested. Don't get me wrong, some of my guys did.
Yeah.
You know, but I let them keep it. I didn't really worry about that too much.
So you got straightened out. You became a made guy, official made guy. About how old were you?
36, I think, when I got made. Yeah. What happened? There was a war in the 90s in Boston.
I was going to get to that. Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, there was a war in the 90s, and, you know, a lot of guys were getting killed up
Like
there.
us, yeah.
Yeah, it was the same thing. What happened, the Petriacca family was in disarray. Frankie Salemi took the family over, and they didn't want him there, the old faction. So there were 3 rebel factions that came up underneath us, looking to get us.
Right.
So it was really intense for a while up there. And the family was in so much disarray, and one of the capos I couldn't get along with. Now, you know how it is in Cosa Nostra. It only takes one guy to knock you down, Larry. You know, and when I fought with this capo, I knew
Your days were numbered.
my days were numbered with the Petriaccas, you know, and I wasn't going to stay under that proposed thing forever.
Right.
So I moved on, and a good friend of mine, Jerry Cormette, a Frenchman out of Rhode Island, well-known guy, had a friend, Giggsy, in New York, Gambino. So Giggsy went and had a meeting with the Nose, and he said, tell Bobby I really can't do nothing for him because there's another family there. So I went down to Philly, and I hooked up with Ralph Natali and Jory Molino, and I ended up getting made in their family.
Right. And you became a capo regime pretty fast.
Yeah, it was pretty fast.
You were about 40, maybe, even at
No, I was 38.
38, 2 years, yeah.
So what happens now, I'm up there. I got the strongest crew in Boston. I was the first ever where there was a sitting family to take another faction in to a city. Now, Boston was a major city at one time, like Cosa Nostra. You know, so I kind of made mob history with that.
Yeah, wow.
No one's ever done that before.
No, well, you get it here first on the life.
Yeah, but the thing was, even without getting made, I was still a boss up there. I still had the power and the money.
Right, yeah. You know, a few guys from our family, you knew them. Bianco, Nicky Bianco, and another few others left New York, went to Boston. And,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nicky was big with Raymond,
yeah.
Those guys, yeah.
So during the war, you guys were protecting yourself and your interests, and it got bloody.
Got really bloody.
And was it shootouts in the street like ours was? Was it more quiet?
Well, I can tell you, it was in a few shootings in the street.
Okay, all right.
You know, and a few times they try to get me, obviously.
Yeah, almost like the old Wild West.
Yeah, that's what it was in the 90s up there, like the Wild West.
Yeah.
But mostly everything we did was meditated and planned and done properly.
Right.
But, you know, there's the times you run into people.
Yeah.
It was sad, Larry. It was that for duffel bag in my trunk
Right.
with a black running suit with the hood, just in case I ran into somebody.
Right. Amazing.
Yeah.
Did you have to wear a bulletproof vest every day?
I never wore it.
We did.
Yeah. But I went out every day with guns on me.
Yeah. So that had to be a nightmare going through that war.
It
Trying
was.
to get in and out of your house. And
It really was. I mean, for years I had safe houses. I was moving around. but also for my business too, to protect everything.
Right.
You know, because they weren't only looking to kill us, they would have robbed us if they got the chance too.
Right.
You know, a lot of those guys are home now.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my friends that are away at home now. And I'll tell you, it's real peaceful up there now, thank God.
Is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm right in Boston. I'm in the city.
And some of them learned their lesson. But you did 14 years.
I did 14 years at federal prison.
Yeah, that's no joke. Tell us a little bit about that. People don't, realize what it is and how you're taken away from your family and your kids and your wife and your parents.
Well, I'll tell you, the feeling's terrible. June of '99, they came to my house, the feds. They came and got me, and they put me in the car, and I knew it was over.
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting, because of Joey Molino, I was sitting with an FBI agent. I'm at the top of the world. I got money, cars, I got everything. Then they put the cuffs on you, they bring you in, and you realize there's nothing left. It's all over, From being on top of the hill now, you're just another prisoner.
And the nightmares, paying lawyers,
Yep.
paying investigators, they milk you to death.
Yep.
And all you hear is the horror stories.
Yeah.
Nobody wins. And
No.
Yeah.
No.
People start flipping
Yeah.
and turning.
Well, sadly enough, I'm in there. I'm only faced at 10 to 12 with a drug charge,
Right.
which to me, that was kind of like a vacation. You got to take your licks. It's all right.
Of course.
Unfortunately, some of the guys that I murdered with and came up with were ratting on me.
Then it's lights out.
Yeah. And I found out about it. I told my lawyer. We heard there were murder, indictments coming down. So I called my lawyer, and he brought an ex-AUSA down to see me when I was in Plymouth, in Massachusetts. He said, "Bobby, you're not getting out." He says, "Your friends lined up against you. I can't get you out." He says, I get you to 10 to 12 right now that they're offering, but you're getting re-indicted as soon as there's another grand jury for murder one. And you're not escaping it.
It never ends.
Yeah. So he asked me, he says, "You want to talk to him?" I said, no, don't even talk to me about that.
Right.
But I went on my cell, and I'm stewing for a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one of the guys are in there with me. And I loved him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what to do, And finally, I called him and said, "Come back." And I talked with him. But the problem I had, Larry, is I couldn't do it. I got to be honest with you. I'm over here. I was building my own family.
Right.
The deal I made with Joey was going to stay with him for 2 years as a couple, like tradition. And then I was going to be able to break off and have the Luisi family in Boston. So I'm building all of this, Larry. Then I got hit with a sledgehammer.
Yep.
Not with the drug conviction.
Yeah.
Because my crew and my family was still out there.
The Rico.
Yeah. So I knew I was getting superseded. So I had to make a decision. So I went and I talked with them, but it didn't work out. Talked with them for several months, but it didn't work out. And took my plea back. Fortunately, I was able to do that.
Yeah.
And I went to trial twice on the drug charges. First time I went, I got 20 years. Second time, if you remember, the guideline changed, I think 2004 or 6.
Yep.
Well, my appeal, I fell through the cracks. I went on appeal. So when I went back, I lost again, but they had to take 47 months off.
That's a break.
Yeah, it was a break.
It's a big break because you don't get many.
Well, the government's bad. What they did, because I'm Bruno Scaffo family. I was the Luisi faction in Boston, and Joey Merlino was the Merlino faction in Philadelphia. They split it up so we'd both be bosses. But there was really only one boss.
Right.
Joey was my boss, So the second trial, they couldn't pull that. And I ended up getting the leadership taken off. And I went down to 15-8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big break, too.
Yeah, and I did 14.
MOBtv. Welcome to the family.